Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You're tuned into utilizing the drums to enhance your music, part two, where our favorite drummer, Mike Malyan, who I tried to convince to use auto-tune for the next hour, but I don't think he's going to do it. But I tried, everybody. I tried. Mike, what's going on, man?
I'm an F. Yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you?
I
I
guess
just, well, yeah,
there's no
yeah.
better time to thank Antelope Audio for sponsoring today's event.
Oh, it's good to be back, Derek. Hello, my friend. It's good to
Always
see you
good having
again.
you on, man. Great to see you. To all the Mally fam who's probably on YouTube right now, like, what's about to happen?
Yeah, I'm going to keep the chat closed on this one because me and chat and text to speech have been developing a very strange relationship, which has actually resulted in an album recently being made called LLLLLLL. I think you can imagine why. So I'm going to ask you, Derek, to pass on any questions that come
Definitely.
about a like process and stuff like that, and I'm just going to let the good friends of the Mali Club just have a good old time.
There we
And
go. And I'm gonna let you do your thing because I'm the non-musical one here. So everybody, the wonderful Mike Malyan is gonna take it away. If you guys do have any questions, don't wait. Drop it into the YouTube chat, and I will relay it over to Mr. Malyan.
amazing. Thank you so much, Derek. So I did a bit of a session with you all before, and essentially I went pretty deep into some kind of nutty polymetric metal djenty kinds of things. And this time around, I wanted to come at it at a bit of a different angle, sort of reviewing a few of the things that we did before, but also for those who didn't watch our previous stream, essentially just really driving home the point of some of these techniques and how universal they are, while sometimes they may seem complex. You can pretty much use the same bank of ideas, of starting points of ideas for pretty much any metal riff and sort of move forwards with that. This is metal focused, although I do other genres. The proggy metal djenty world is kind of my go-to. It's sort of the thing that I do the most. So what I did is I cooked up a few riffs, honestly 10 minutes, 5 minutes before I jumped onto this stream. So these are pretty generic and pretty, in my mind, a little uninspired, but it's going to be cool to see what I can do with them because that will be a good example of how drums can unlock some kind of hidden potential and some fun bits and bobs. So what I've essentially done is come at it from a couple of different angles, but we've got no drums. So here's my riff number one. Make sure that you all can hear this. So pretty low-tuned, good fun going on here. And essentially, we're going to look at some various ways that we can turn this into different riffs. And I think the main thing I'm looking to show you is something that we touched on at the end of the last session called metric modulations. Essentially, it's doing a tesseract, which, if you don't know, that band is amazing for introducing a theme and then changing the pulse at which you're nodding, but the note base hasn't changed. So one of the meters stays the same, the one where the weirdness of the riff exists in, or simplicity of the riff, in this case being that we've got a quite regular set of 4 notes, changing melodically, but not rhythmically. 2, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got 4 notes, and so I thought I'd start it with something quite simple. But for those of you who are starting with a riff and you don't really know where to start, we're going to go over that process again and just kind of prove its efficacy. The best one is looking for what's inside the guitar riff and deciding at which part of that musically do we want to add our kick drums to it, because the kick drums are linked with the kind of the accent material, which can be in any weird time, But then you've got the main part of the drums, the common time feel, which is our, enjoying jamming, the kind of crowd nodding, delta wave, hypnotic vibe that we all love. So we'll start by laying down the top end of this. I'm using, I can't remember which drum kit I'm using at the moment. I think it's a Get Good Drums one. So I'm just going to lay down, I think, a stack cymbal on 1 and 3 of this bar. It's a fast bar. This project's set up at 185, so this would be like doing it on beats 1, 2, 3, and 4 if you were at half the tempo. Just kind of feels like a nice tempo to go at. I'm going to throw down some pedal hats, just using a little bit of note duplication and note length. This is another reason, again, why I use the piano roll inside Cubase instead of the drum part of the program, in order to control my duplication and note lengths, which you just can't do when you've only got single durationless, instant hits. They can't have a length to it. So we're going to throw down a snare as well on this, which is going to sound like 1, 2, 3, 4. This project's just double the speed of what I would normally do. So theoretically, I'm thinking of this kind of as one bar, but it doesn't really matter because this would be considered a halftime bar. It just doesn't sound too much like it for me. Anyway. So what we've got is just pedal hat, snare, and the stack cymbal. So this is like our top half. This is the part that is unlikely to change. We can decorate it a little bit with some ghost notes. I'm going to show you one of my favorite patterns to do on ghosts and reiterate why I do ghost notes on a different snare note. This is a bit of a hangover from when I do my keyboard drums, is I drum over 2 notes, and then when I'm programming, I use them for the quiet and loud versions. It's just easier to kind of, in Cubase at least, control click on a note and immediately start manipulating the velocity of it. So this is the ostinato or repeating pattern that I love the most. My insert velocity is going to be at about 30 for ghost notes. And it goes 1 E and 2 E and so 1 E and 2 E and 1 E and 2 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and But again, I can use that duplicate function because I know I want the note to start on the second one. Drag it a little longer, just go bang, 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 Control D 3 times, and then fixed lengths, which I've got a custom shortcut for. Very, very quick to go, and then because we're on a separate note, I can basically pull that velocity up so it sounds nice. And inside a mix, this is pretty perfect to just work with. I'm gonna turn that bass down just a bit. It's pretty mentally loud. Shout out to Cubase for throwing in a mixer on the left, like Logic has had for so long. That's one thing I've been hoping for ages. So what we're going to have is just now making our decisions on what means that we put a kick on it. Because it's very easy to just do something like this. Oh, I forgot to increase the velocity. So these are now the world's most quiet kick drums in the world. There we go. So this is the easy overlay of like, well, this is metal, so here's double kick. But it's a little bit uninspired. It might work if you were throwing a crash over it. And because double kick, remove pedal hats. Only 2 feet at the end of the day. Nothing wrong with that, but we're going to look at alternatives. So if you are listening to what the guitar's doing, we've got an open note, as in fully open struck note, no muting. Open higher note, bam bam, and then mute mute. So you could consider open notes equals kick drum as like a pattern, program, or game, or rule, however you like to think about it. And it would look like this, just in this riff. Ba-da, da-da, 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 da-da. It feels like it's missing a little bit of motion for me, so I might double up the stacks and then reduce the in-between ones' volumes. And this is a totally, again, a totally usable pattern. You could also put the kick drums where the mutes are. Nothing wrong with that, and this can be interesting for sort of having the focus of the riff be on the opposite side of where you expect. But of course it helps to have information that is varied within your guitar playing or within the riff. But I find that analyzing these kind of pressure points and non-pressure points, or like ons and offs, helps my riffs have a little bit more highs and lows, which I can then mess around with. But if you do have sequences of notes that are ascending or descending, if you've got new phrases that skip strings, that can be a start point. Ascending only, or descending, or high notes only, or low notes only. It really depends on what the riff is. So you can take this starting point of a process and then it's all just kind of contextual stuff. If this has inspired any questions already so far, then Derek, please feel free to let me know at any point. I'd like this one to feel a bit more like in the moment interactive Q&A wise. So feel free to just jump in and tell me to stop genting at any moment, and I will be absolutely fine with that. But yeah, to continue on this point, we have so many other things that we could do with this, including going back to having full overlaid double kick drums, muting our pedal hats, and actually flipping this on its head a bit and putting the snare at the beginning of a bar. But we would want it every 4 on 1, 2, 3, and 4. But it's just because of the repetitive nature of the riff. That makes me think that this is valid as well. This can be doubled with changes in what cymbals are being used. I'm a big fan of this kind of movement. This would be great, like going from left to right or right to left across the various cymbal array. And that's why I like to have my cymbals top to bottom is like right to left. So it's sort of like I'm here looking at the kit, like I'm sitting inside like where the ride is, this stuff being on my right and this stuff being on my left. But that's just the way my brain works. That could then build up with another increase of energy. Remember what we were talking about last month with the raising up to a tension point? Doubling up the kick drums, maybe even doubling up the snares. Something if you're leading towards a moment of release. But it really depends what you're wanting to lean towards, what's going to come next, and what the song's asking for. I've just reverted that to how it was. So that's kind of a review of just like a few of those things we talked about before. Ghost note, repeating patterns that I call ostinatos, repeating percussive patterns. The top part of the kit and the common meter, and then the kick drums linked to the guitars In this instance, that's common as well. That's just normal time. But me being me, I've written a couple of bits and bobs of slightly more odd time things. I've got 2 of them here, and this is where I'm going to demonstrate the kind of Tesseract-y kind of stuff to you. So this is an odd one because it's kind of a riff in 5, but the time base of the session is still in 4. And I like to think of what the DAW is in is what I want this feeling to be. So I'm going to lay down a basic beat, and it's going to be a crash cymbal every 2 quarter notes in this. So every half note at 185. And in this case, I think I'm actually going to not put the snare in common time. So in this sense, the top part and the group focus, it's just going to be purely in the cymbals, and then what's happening in the kick drums and snares is going to be in the weird time of the snares, of the riff. Sorry, what's happening in the kick and snares is going to be what's happening with the weirdness of the riff. So again, with that, like open and closed notes, powerful and non-powerful, open and muted, we've got ba-da-dim-ba. So open, open, mute, higher note. So I'm going to convert that into drum energy by going low, open, mute equals nothing, high open equals snare, and then I've kind of understood natively that this is a 5/16 note long pattern. 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, and there's nothing that changes about that. It just loops around. Oh, I'm so used to writing in a slower time base. I'm so good usually at doing that and not having to check it, but this time it got me good.
Mike, we did have a question come in on
let's
Ghost
go.
Notes. So it's Drusif asking, do you tend to go for ghost notes that only hit alone, aka linear drumming, or do you go by feel?
I have a few rules that go with it. Also, hi Drew, it's good to see you. LLLLLL. So I'm kind of got a 3-tiered approach to it. And it's going to be sort of mixed around like what the beat is doing. In this instance, where the snare is linked with the riff, it's going to be a bit different, and it's going to be entirely based around what I can do around that. It would be easier for me to demonstrate over the old riff, so I'm going to jump back for you. So here, as you can see, we've got like, I'm going to go back to having the kicks just on the heavy notes, the open non-muted. And as you see, I've got the ostinato here, which is what you've picked up on. I've got snares happening while there are kick drums going on. And so that's normally my first thought, either this. But yes, sometimes I will be in the mood where I will want to not have kicks and ghosts overlaying. So then I might get rid of these ones wherever they overlap with the kick. And then the only other thing I would do is sometimes is to do 2 16th notes instead of an 8th note at the end, or 2 double speed at the end of a pattern like this. So I might get rid of one or double it up, because I like the sound of a. But then that's probably a 2-handed thing, so I will lose a stack there. But the only other process I might add to it is trying to fill in the gaps while avoiding this gat. Although I'm learning to play that a bit better these days. Sometimes I'll just fill in the gaps. But then it might be a mix of those two, and the riff has to be a bit more complex for this to make sense. But I'll either feel out while playing, or I'll analyze the pros and cons versus forcing an ostinato or forcing just a so the hands kind of have like an alternating feel. It's an easy go-to as a drummer. And then what's the best mid-ground between the ostinato, the gap filling, and trying to avoid ghosts before main hits, and sometimes sneaking in these kind of double speed ending tension points. And it really depends on what the riff is and how it feels and how crazy the main snares are in order to find what the middle ground is. But that's pretty much just a mixture of me liking both Misha and Latin music. By Misha, I mean Periphery. And like that sort of Meshuggah-y or Periphery drum programming where it's like pretty much always either purely gap filling, purely linear with the kick, or it's that's the gang gang because it's just a nice feel. It feels like a tambourine is in the track, but it's not. Hopefully that answers the question quite well. I like to make rules and then break them, but not the other way around. I do make them and then break them, or break them and then make them when I don't have them. So nothing got broken. Everything is broken. So back to the original, the thing I was talking about beforehand as well, assuming there are no other questions that have kind of come up as a result of that.
We do have one. I don't know if you want to jump on it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
How do you make them sound more human and not programmed? Examples,
Ooh.
Catch 33 or Altered State?
Ackle is a programming lord. So there are, I think the hallmark of a great writer is their drum programming writing abilities, and I think some of the best drummers we have in music, they don't touch the sticks, but their parts inside this world are astonishing, absolutely astonishing. So I think that a lot of it is kind of occasionally in varying dynamics, usually ascending velocity. I like the sound of when I'm playing myself. For example, if I take these fast ghosts at the end. Hello, that's just the bass. I didn't want that. I wanted this one. No, bad Cubase. There you go. So that is a really good example of like how that can add humanity, but also just adding a bit of randomness to it. So I've got a few presets here that Cubase has, where I've added this rough mode. I just don't do it to the first notes because then they can move back off the beginning of the MIDI file and then not play. But this like 5 ticks or 5 like, I think it's ticks are kind of interesting because it depends what the base of what that actually is. But as I hit quantize over and over again, you'll see they get kind of nervous and move around. Any one of these is absolutely fine, and it adds a nice bit of realism. It's very subtle if I turn it back to completely straight. Just enough to make it feel a bit more like a human, and then it's just in realistic note choices, and essentially finding the parts that work really well. And there's loads. That's pretty much just in like clever ornamentation and not kind of breaking the fourth wall when it comes to the drums. For example, on this weird riff. One of the things I think works really well is a mixture of keeping the right hand either crashing straight with the, crashing on each one of these hits, and then thinking about where can I accent these in a way that works right left with these hands. So for example, this one, in order to, I might, I've got to set that insert velocity back up to full. I might have it so that my right hand and then my left hand goes over these two kicks. This one, it might be just starting the bar. Or it might change to left, right. It depends what sounds right. And then occasionally having like a china on like one of the note starts points. But interestingly, I've been finding that the second note of a sequence of notes is the one I like to accent. And then like it's all dependent on where can the hand actually fit without where's this extra handed motion going versus where the snares are. This for me feels like it would be the left hand. So we might use the left crash or the hi-hat. That's totally valid, and keeping it kind of moving. And then other little things like ascending snare rolls at the end of riffs. Potentially a little bit louder. But it also helps to make those choices not happen on every loop. Just by doubling it and then doing something different the next time round. The same process, but just picking different ones. That will make listeners not hear the same thing twice, which will make it sound more realistic, or at least more interesting. If that answers some of the questions. It's obviously a hugely complex process, but that's what I love about it, is the simple concepts. They always go in a different direction depending on the mood of the writer, the mood of the music, and the requirements of the structure and everything. Is that all we have in the bank for questions so far, my dude?
Yes, sir, so far.
Amazing. Shall we get Tesseracty in here? I'm gonna basically show you what I was talking about before with that idea of metric modulation, or changing the common time base without changing what this is doing. We're going to change what this is doing, the common time part. So we're going to go ahead. I'm not going to delete it. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go ahead and just use Cubase's like add silence mode and Control-Shift-E. I think insert silence can just push things away, give you some room to work, which is very good. So this is going to be a process of hinting at it and then committing completely. So there are ways to sort of transition your way between these, which Tesseract are masters of, and I find it really interesting in more this idea of more long form prog metal, where the riffs and their stories take time to unfold. And I love it because it sounds like the writer has had fun making tweaks, allowing them to flow in a linear way, and then wherever it lands becomes, usually then the dynamic just jumps down and it becomes a verse, and now it's a new song, even if it's the middle of a song. And I've always loved that style of writing. It's very like common structure less and riff forward, but then repetition and back and forth motion of like good solid compositional theory and structural strength kind of come in. But it's fun because you can just get lost in a riff for a while. The listener can get lost in it one part after another, and then you can go from there. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to start with this guy. Where we're going to be trying to land is going to be here. Starting with a pedal hat every 3/16 notes. Ta, 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 ta. And as you can see, this length-based thing is very useful because it's told me something quite interesting. I'm 2 notes too long. in the common time thing. So I'm going to run into problems unless I make this long. But that means that this has to start again here. So what you might see that I've done here is I've just copied it 3 times. And the reason I know it's 3 times I'm going to need to rotate is because we've got 1/3 of it here, 2 more thirds of it there, 1 note on, 2 notes off the edge. That means it's going to be 2 bars off the edge, 2 repeats more to cycle to that point next and that point next. Assuming this isn't changing from being 5s over and over again. Or actually that doesn't matter. It's just assuming this is being common and rigid, it's going to take 2 more loops to resolve this. But the complex material isn't here, so it is in these kicks. So what I'm going to do is get rid of everything except for the beginning and just copy it until we get to the end, and hey presto, the pedal hat ends at the end of the bar now. It's now 3 times as long as it was before. 3 repeats of this. As you can see, that snare roll at the end is now here, here, and here. We will now move to a china because we've changed something. It works to kind of change the china as well. And then I'm just going to go for 1 every 3 as well, following what the pedal hat is doing. 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3. So now imagine that a bar is this long now, and it's triplets: 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. We can later make that the case with our programming, and I'll show you a cool way of how to do that afterwards. But for now, we just have to imagine this is our new rule of 1 2 3 4. 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3 1 2 3 2 2 3 3. Oh, no more guitars. But to be honest, I think it would work better if we just had the kicks on that riff and the snares would just be in this new common time. So these are now becoming kicks. Hello. I'm just going to make sure they're all nice and loud. So now it's... And then if we get lost, because this is obviously now quite complex, we can sort of forget about it and just think, well, here we have 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. Just copy the third one, and then if you don't want to get lost again, copy it out until the end of 4 of them. Maybe then 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. You can just let that length dictate it, and if you've gotten that right, then that will just work. And then that can be like where we end. We can have that similar kind of like end of riff snare roll. So now we have no ghosts, but we have otherwise a really nicely complete part. So here's an ostinato I like for triplet feel: 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and. It's ding gat gets the gat that's the 1 and a 2 and a 3 4 and that's Chris Coleman blew my mind recently when he told me to try and say these things with the reference to where they are in the bar when you play them. I'm still working on it. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and like this, and then in order to get my loop correct, because I know I want to start on the second note, I've made it 2 notes long. And then fixed lengths again. Now everything looks quite nice and neat, except for this one. We can then, using some of the feedback from the questions we've had about trying to make it nice and human, I can use that random five tick thing. And then other things I could do, and I'll do this at the initial point and then re-loop it to save me some time. Every time I've got a group of 2 notes, I'll ascend in velocity, because that's quite nice and human. Make it a little bit lower, a little bit higher, and then we'll re-loop. This might now not work as well as before because of the randomness, so I'm going to quantize it hard again. And then I'm going to loop. By quantize hard, I mean get rid of that randomness. And then... Oh no, that's triplet. So I pressed the wrong button like 3 times in a row there. There we go. That's now quantized to... So we have where we came from. And where we're going. And I think this would work better as an example if the riff were more complicated. Then it would be more accurate to what artists in this genre do. But I thought I'd make the riff simple because I only allowed myself 5 minutes to do it beforehand, and because I wanted the melodicisms to be simple enough that the rhythm could be the focus. But I'm aware that it's quite a repetitive and low information example melodically. There's usually a little bit more flair going on within these weird time groups and stuff, but I'm okay with it being how it is. So that can bring up some questions about how we get there, and I think in general it's actually quite nice to maybe think about, we utilize this do-do-gats do-do-gats as maybe the part that bridges the two, and we put that back on the kicks, the do-dun-dun, ga-da-dun. Gonna need that loud snare. Gonna do-dun-dun, ga-da-dun-dun, do-dun-dun, 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 da-da-dun-dun, da-da-dun. Then maybe on a different cymbal to signify change is coming. And maybe a different pace of cymbals, so more pulsing on like full half, or less, depends on how much. And that all depends on the cymbal, the speed, and how loud it's decaying, how it feels to pulse. Like, that now feels like full-blown 8th note craziness, which is adding up in a way that is cool, but not how I intended. And here's a trick, and this really is like keys to the castle stuff. This is stuff I started to utilize in Monuments and Algorithm years ago, and I've spent so long trying to work on it, is actually just get rid of a bunch of symbols and start counting backwards in the new time. So 3s. So I'll use like an accent symbol like that stack. Oh, that's a splash. Awkward. And then I'll actually just copy them backwards. And then I'll find an accent that allows me to start lined up with a kick like this, for example. And then I'll utilize where you're expecting the symbol to be then. This 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, and then sort of weird stuff, and then we'll see where the snare lands. the building block to a cool bridge. I think I liked the sound of the full volume 8th note feels. In fact, if anything, it's making me feel like I want these to be maybe? And then we'll just see how that works. Although that felt like it wanted to be now. Now I can't necessarily immediately explain why that immediately felt right to me, because that's my creative side. But the technical analysis of that is it just feels nice to go because that speed into the snares feels like it's that tension rising. And now we'll find the middle ground of how to bridge these two. So sometimes I'll actually I'll try and find ways to fill within this world. So these four are gonna be like our new count in. So we can focus the fill snare focused on dun dun ga, and then we've got our lead in. Now we can bridge this a bit better. So I would maybe just use a couple of tricks to focus on what the snare feels like. I suppose so that feels right because it's messing with a group of four here, which is where we were at before with the fours. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 within this whole thing. So, but yeah, other than that, I can't really explain why that feels right for me. But as you can see, the project hasn't changed time base here. It still thinks it's 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. And it's kind of tricky to pull off the maths to make that work where the project has changed. The quick and dirty way to do it is to do a tap tempo insert tempo event at selection start, for example. That's a Cubase thing, but you can tap it out and then just drag in a tempo information. So you could just go and just kind of hit and hope, and whatever it is whatever it is. But the problem is that, as you'll find, the audio doesn't want to sit there. So that didn't work. That's interesting. But I saw the number was about 1 2 3 or something like that. And what we're aiming for is the ability for this now to exist in we're wanting it to end right here on this. I've now moved the time base to triplets. It wants to be that long. So we could keep guessing at it, or we could use some maths. I've got a handy little calculator button here, the nerd that I am. Oh my god, a full screen calculator. As if people weren't scared enough of the numbers before. Now it's just, I don't want to see the scientific stuff. Come on, give me the, I don't want to see that stuff. Who wants to see that stuff? Give me the normie. There you go. So we were at 185. Now, as far as I recall, we're wanting to divide that by 4, or times it by 4, because we want to hear what it would be like if we had a bar that was 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So we'll times it by 4. Now we've got, that would be 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, bar, 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 bar. And now we get bar, 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 divided by 3. 2, 4, 6. I'm going to divide that by 2 because that's kind of crazy. And we got 1, 2, 3.3. I was close with 1, 2, 3. But if we make it 1, 2, 3.3 recurring, as many 3s as it will allow, 3. Look at that. Right on the money. Almost. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a thing where I like time stretch it just to make it exactly length so that then nothing weird happens with the duplication. And what you'll notice is that while the audio now lines up perfectly and our time base has officially modulated, were I to copy this over, it would now sound like... Because as far as the MIDI's concerned, we're still doing 16th notes. So we have to stretch it to be the same length. So it's really important that you get your start and end points right if you're going to use time stretching to make that work. So for example, those 3 have to become 1, then have to become the length of the audios. So that's the hack if you want to go mathy with it and modulate like that. Times it by 4, divide it by 3. Or vice versa if you're trying to get from here. But you want your bar to be 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... From 1 and a 2 and a 3. You have to times by 3 and then divide by 4. I only did that extra divide by 2 because I didn't want it to be so fast that it was like I was making mistakes before. I like the tempo to... It feels like it should ramp down anyway. Does that make sense? Or was that far too advanced and crazy to watch immediately? I remember when I first discovered that mathy thing, I was like, oh my good lord, we've now broken scientifically. And then I also forgot the logic of getting there. It took me so long to get, and I forgot it for ages, and now I've remembered it again. But should have renamed this thing how to use maths to mess up your music and give you 2 riffs for the price of 1 rather than using drums to enhance your beats. But in fairness, the beat has changed. The beat and the time base of the beat has changed. So I think I've always wanted to show that off, and this is the first time I've ever tried doing it. So it's been a little bit hair raising, but thankfully I had the head to pull that one off. Has that inspired any more questions so far, my dear Derek friend?
We do have a question if you have a favorite time signature to work in.
4. Controversial answer to a very good question. No, really, I guess I get what you're saying. I don't tend to think about that part of the weird music as the part that has a set number. What I mean by that is if I put this last riff back in 185, I've got one more riff to show you, and this is I can contextualize this within this one. So I have this as a riff, and technically you could look at this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But thinking in that way is very limiting, and it's not how the music gets made. And it's not what we love about the sound of it, because if we stay rigid that that's only going to be 9, 16, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then we're losing the plot a little bit. Let me explain. These work better when you think of them as pieces. Like this. And then you can have variations on this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this over to make a new riff out of it. I love 9, but particularly I love the fact that we've got 5, sorry, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 5 and 4 in my head. A and B. So I love things that do this. A, B, A, B, A, B, B. A, B, A, B, A, B, B. For example, that would sound like with 4 superimposed over the top of it. That's the wrong button. Now, this is why I can't answer the question as 9, because I like it to go 5 4 5 4 5 4 4, or A B A B A B B, and then melodies to change within some of these is also really lovely. Like I've got in this original example, I forced it to the common time length of a beat of the bar by cutting the end off. 2, 3. So we have to cut the end off by changing it, and I've changed the note to signify we're coming back around in common time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's a beat to help because I'm imagining it and you may well not be hearing it. Here's the bluntest beat we can have. So this is like, kind of like A, B, A, B, A, B, variation on A that's truncated to fit the new form. Because if it were, if it were allowed to stay as a 5, it would be like 1 note longer. And then it would loop. Which would actually be a sick riff, I think. And the only reason I can hear that in my head is because I've done this so many times. But that's why when I teach the drums, especially to guitarists, I focus on the song and the musical entirety rather than just the drums, because they all intertwine in such cool ways, and that's the part that makes us so interested. So if I allowed that to be go 5 4 5 4 5 4 5 5 4. Well, I actually love the sound of that so much that I prefer that to this one. But it's the patterns within it, especially if there's something else going on melodically within here. It could be like every 2 blocks. This is going to sound real crude. Change transpose up 5, change transpose up 3. And then every 2 blocks, we'll do a chord sequence. Like 1. So it'll be like the degrees of the scale 1, 4, 3, 6, 1, 4, which is 5. Semitones. This is just like an example of like nerdiness. 2, 3, 4. So like the melodic changes are different from the rhythmic changes. Every 2 parts change note, for example. But that's because I'm just strange in the head, and I like to mess things up as much as physically possible. Does that answer your question at all? And if so, awesome. But if not, um, we can look at in another session taking a riff that you know well and then picking it apart into its little pieces and demonstrating this more with riffs that you're really comfortable with. The more comfortable you are with the source material, the more I can kind of help you with that, which is why with my students, when I teach drum programming and metal theory and stuff, it's all about take the song that you've been agonizing over and working on so much, because then that's a barrier to entry lowered in that you already know the material and now you're developing a new relationship with it. So I usually start with whatever the student knows and is happy with versus the rest of it. And if you're interested in that stuff, you can always hit me up on my various channels. I'm always up for that. But otherwise, yeah, it's a great time to be alive when it comes to sharing music theory online.
Mike, can we sneak in one last question? We
Of
had a
course.
follow up based on you riffing over
Amazing.
there.
I'm here as long as you want me. Like honestly, I'm down for seeing it through, you know?
There we go. I love it. Related to what you were talking, what tips would you give to those who don't play drums or percussion to be able to decipher complex time signatures?
That's the big thing here, isn't it? Is how to decipher it. For me, this feels natural now. The fact that as I wrote this, it was a 5 note and a 3 note. The fact is, I like thinking about the rhythm of how long the whole total of a riff is very helpful, because as a guitarist, was the question's context about being a guitarist that doesn't play drums or about being someone who doesn't play guitar? That's the bit I forgot about there. So if it's about having a guitarist who doesn't play drums, as you play, you tend to think about 1 2 off, 1 2 off, and you'll say the riff is 2 2 2, but the off is being implied. The length of that off time isn't being expressed, and that's the big difference with how drummers and guitarists think. So that's a good way to start, is as you're looking at your riffs, maybe, yes, to play it, you have to think like, and that is 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, and then, but you're resting for one at the end. So that's actually, objectively, that's 6 notes long, 5 of which are on and 1 of which is off. 1 2 3 4 5 off, 1 2 3 4 5 6. So that really helps. And then just trying to work out where the repeats are happening in either your music or music that you like. Good examples exist in lots of them, and I love breaking them down and showing them off. Again, I like to work with what you know rather than what I know, so that it's not all new like this is. But there are so many great examples, but there are also so many complex ones where there are so many changes. It's very hard to hear the differences, which is why I tend to show these techniques with simplified versions of riffs. It helps to get the point across. But there are, I'm just trying to pull one out of the top of my head. It's like various monuments riffs or periphery riffs. But there are loads of like things in Meshuggah where it's like jun 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 jun, and that's 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 jun jun off 1 off 1 off 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2, superimposed either with dun 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 dun, or dun 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 dun. Again, you get easier at imagining that the more of this programming you do, the more planning you do, the more you allow yourself to hear out a weird idea, maybe do some cutting at the 16th note level to hear what it would sound like if you were to do A, B, A, B, B. For example, I came up with this riff. I never would have written this if I hadn't used the DAW to do that. I just discovered I like a new kind of, what I'd like to call an additive displacement, in that there's a little bit too much information, so it's going over the bar line, as opposed to something that's got too little information. It ends a bit soon compared to the common time, therefore it's starting again. like here, for example, or here, or here, or wherever. Um, but it's a never-ending process, and it's one of my favorite things to teach, to the point where someone goes, "Ah, yes, I get it now." And until we get to that point, I am just like, we're now doing nothing else other than that. We're going straight for that.
Love it. Mike, this was awesome, man. I'm kind of curious. You don't have to give me a drawn out answer, but it's always, as somebody who's not musical, who loves music, I've always wondered, like, what is the order you guys write songs in? Like, what comes first? Does I mean, I get it. Everybody probably has their different style, but is there like a predominant, something that gets written before anything else?
What a great question. What a great like way of looking at it as well. I think so. Mick Gordon, the amazing composer of the Doom soundtracks, who collaborated on Monument's most recent record in Stasis, he famously was quoted at the Games Development Conference. There's a video of that. I reference it all the time. The Games Development Conference 2016, or GDC 2016. And his whole process was change the process to change the outcome. And a lot of the time we listen to the outcome and we wonder sometimes, although it doesn't happen too often, what is the process that got you there? Where was the inspiration? It really changes for someone's own creativity, for someone's own spark, and it's completely different from person to person. For example, Ackle from Tesseract, he invited us at a birthday party once at his place to look at some of his writing, and he used video in his session, and I can only surmise that he was writing to this video of the ISS of going across Earth. And there was this moment where the sun broke across the horizon and the first note of this record began. And it was an otherworldly experience that I'd never seen anyone else do. The video was never used as part of any part of the release. So it's a little bit of a thing where, like, it was very sacred to see something like that and go. But a lot of musicians are either a bit too self-conscious to show that, or, we spend so much time wondering, am I good enough? Is what I'm doing, actually valid? Have I obsessed over this to the point where it's now unlistenable? So it's good to stay grounded and make sure that you're focusing on the fact that someone can actually enjoy it. And for me, it's all about this, and then what comes out around it is like a fun game of tennis between, are you holding on or getting thrown off, being able to tell what's going on, how well is that information being planted that's outside of your immediate understanding, but you'll get it after a few listens. But there's enough there for anyone to kind of get it, even if not on a conscious level. There's enough little bits of repetitiveness and stuff. But yeah, so that's my process of looking at it. But there are sometimes I just will get on a piano and just feel something out, and it will be a very emotional thing. But yeah, the output will only be different if the workflow is different. So if an artist does the same thing, exactly the same from start to finish every time, it'll all sound the same. And that you can kind of hear where an artist gets stuck in a rut. You've got a lot of stuff that doesn't sound very varied, and it's usually because that happens. So the hardest part of being a creative is being open to changing that process. You finally work it out, it finally works, and then you can't do it again to get the same thing out. It's an absolute curse. At least I think so. I haven't ever heard of anyone who's gone, yeah, I just sit down and do the same thing every day and I write banger after banger. Some people do, but I think it's a lot of ear candy can be made that way, but it will sound formulaic. So it really depends. Do you like the sound of stuff that all sounds homogenous and the same? Then the workflow probably is. Kind of. That's the best insight I think I could give anyway.
I love it. Wonderfully articulated. It's always great having you on, Mike. I know the fans appreciate it out there. And for an hour a day when you come on, I just get to sit here and listen to music and get paid for it. So you know I'm not going to complain.
No, I love that, and I love your vibe as well. And I want to thank Antelope as well for setting these events up. For those who don't know, this has been kind of set up with Antelope and B&H. I'm an avid Antelope user. I love what their tech allows me to do. Short story is, I can send all of this audio straight down Zoom without thinking about how the DAW audio gets to Derek and the team. It just goes through using the native loopback and the mixes, and there's so much more to it than that. But yeah, just a big shout out to them for creating tools that make sharing creativity quite effortless for me as a power user.
There you go. Couldn't have said it any better myself. And I love it because then we don't have to worry about sound check. We know that you're just going to log on and everything's going to sound great.
Yeah, we used
One
to
of the
have like,
beauties.
didn't we used to sometimes have like an hour or more like rehearsal to make sure everything works? And now you guys are like, yeah, you can just show up like 5 minutes
Just
before.
log on like 2 minutes before, we
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
smack in the green
Yeah,
room, and then we go live.
The vibe has changed so much the more you've gotten confident in that, and I have as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much.
Next time, I'm not even logging on. You're just hosting yourself. I'll be in the audience. That's
I
it.
love that. Well, yeah, you can catch me on my various socials, Twitch and YouTube and whatnot. Regular live streaming, a lot of brain rot and a lot of weird music writing. Me and my friend Itzdrusiv, we just wrote this really weird album under the name Chaos Mode, which you can check out. The record title is 15 L's in a row. Just L L L L L L L L L L L L.
That's great.
That's 15. Yay. Yeah,
Love it.
that's about all I got for you all.
Awesome. Well, I know it's 5 hours later over there. Time to let you go, cut you loose, Mike. Huge thank you, of course, to Mike, as always, and Enelope Audio for hosting this wonderful content. To all of our viewers out there, can't do it without you guys. But another edition of the B&H Event Space now in the books. Catch y'all next time.